Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Very welcome this evening. We've got a number of people that's linking in via YouTube, and you'll also be able to get the presentation as well as the questions and answers on YouTube for those of you that weren't able to get it this evening or would like to review something we discussed this evening. So welcome to everyone. My name is Jan Zederberg. I'm a Director of Bondev with Rian Botma. We've been around since the year 2000. Midstream is part of our dream, and later on became involved in Midstream electrical supplies. And we started approximately 5-6 years ago looking at what we can do with solar and started to install solar plants. And 5 years ago, the first house in Midstream connected to the grid with solar. So we've been busy on this project for the past 5 years and gradually learning more and more on that. The other thing which I'd like to explain to you this evening is that what control systems we've got in place. Because what triggered this meeting really was when Johannesburg announced their plan to go off and avert load shedding stages 1 to 4, actually 1 to 3, and then they said they may aim at 4. And we started to tick the boxes as to what Johannesburg plans to do. And we saw we already comply with 80% of that. 80% of the controls are already in place, have been in place for the past 10 years, and is something which we can offer directly. But to take this next step, it's got quite a big capital contribution or capital input to be made. And the feeling was that it'll be senseless to do that unless you know what the community says. So this evening, I'm going to do a quick introduction. Then we're going to give you a chance to say, we think it's workable, we'd like you to proceed with this further, or if you feel that way, you can say it's not workable. I'm going to try and answer as many questions, which I can preempt. I will deal with everybody that's already got a solar installation. And maybe I can say at the outset, the concept is that you will only pay for the kilowatt hours consumed during load shedding intervals. MES has got the ability to read 6,300 houses on the moment load shedding starts and the moment it ends. We can do real-time meter reading through the fiber optic, through the equipment installed. So the concept, if you've got solar on your roof, you can buy in, but if you don't use any of the kilowatt hours, you'll pay nil. You don't need to make any contribution. But before I get ahead of myself, let me take the next step and show you, this is the news article that was published by Johannesburg Council. It says they need 400 million rand, and then the items they said they identified they would like to use or introduce would be new gas turbines, a ripple relay. For those of you that don't know what a ripple relay is, it's a relay that used to be in place by the old municipalities. They send a ripple on the sinus wave of the power, and that then switches off equipment on or off. The problem with that is you can only do 2 signals on that curve. So you can only switch off half of the area or switch on half of the area, which has also got another impact. But anyway, part of the plan is ripple relay. I must say, in their favor, we also call it ripples, a ripple box in our instance because of the legacy, but the equipment is digital. They plan to procure and distribute smart meters, and I'll come back to that, and also communication system for smart meter project, and then upgrade the management. This is what they said they aim to do, and I'll show you a slide just now exactly what we've already got in place. This is the grid of Eskom in Gauteng, and Midstream right in the center of that. And if we look at Midstream, what makes us unique from other suburban areas is Midstream has got a dedicated connection point to Eskom. Everything that falls within Midstream is one grid, managed by Midstream electrical suppliers. So if we would like to control, for instance, the Centurion Golf Course estate, the guy staying on one side of the river links up to Irene, and the other people link up to Highveld. It's not possible for them to introduce a similar system because the grid is split. Here we've got a single grid that we can control, and as well that we've got the single point of connection to Eskom. What are the options available to Midstream to supplement the supply? The one is before the meter, or the Eskom side of the meter. So what can we do on that side? And I'll show you just now what our investigations have shown us to date. The other one is after the meter, on our side of the meter, if I can put it like that. And then the last one is do nothing and let everybody do a do-it-yourself job. First one is the wheeling option. This is a very well-known option within the Eskom network. There's a power purchase agreement. Somebody generates electricity through a power purchase agreement. It gets transmitted through the distribution grid, and it comes to the customer at the end. We did speak to some people that are independent power producers, but the caveat is, if you read at the bottom of the fact sheet, and it may be small, so I'm going to read it out. Customers that receive wheeled energy from private generators are not exempt from load shedding, as load shedding is a system requirement for all participants in the industry. So to go that route will not avert load shedding. So even if one would be able to find it at a cost-effective basis. If we look at the do-it-yourself options, and we've analyzed a few, the one on your left-hand side is the standard inverter. And if one go and look in the fine print, that inverter has got 800 cycles. With 3 load shedding cycles a day, times 300, you get the picture that that inverter, based on the documentation, will last 1 year. You will replace that every year. It costs about 34,000 Rand. And if you go and work out what the cost of the storage is of that unit, it's 26 Rand a kilowatt hour. If you would put in electricity from the grid, you'll pay 2.50 Rand for that. So the cost of supply through a small inverter is 28.50 Rand per hour. If we then look at a generator, the small generators, depending on the efficiency of the generator, the price varies quite a lot. At 25 Rand per litre, it could be anything from 6 or 8 Rand up to 20 Rand per kilowatt hour. And if you add in the Jenny cost, if you come out at 7.50 Rand a kilowatt hour, you're lucky. If we look at the solar installations, there the batteries last 4,000 cycles. So again, 1,000 cycles a year with 3 load shedding cycles per day. That'll last you 4 years, then you've got to replace the battery. But more or less 3 Rand a kilowatt hour, and if we add in solar panels, and you get the energy from the sun for free, so that will cost you approximately 4 Rand a kilowatt hour. So that's just the basic options available, and I know a number of people in Midstream has done that. If we come to the plan for Midstream, it's important to understand, and I'm sure you all know this, but I just want to emphasize this, that for load shedding 1 to 4, we're talking about 2 hours at a time. Once we go beyond that, we're talking about 4 hours at a time, or 5 gets added to 1 and so forth. So if we want to have battery storage, and that's why we all aim for stages 1 to 4, because that means you've got to bridge 2 hours. The moment you need to put in batteries for the 4-hour span, obviously it doubles in investment. So let's just compare where Midstream is relative to the plan of what Joburg proposed. Joburg came up with a plan, they costed at 400 million. Right at the end, they said we haven't got the 400 million, which was, I think, very unfortunate. Our budget for this project at Midstream is 200 million, and I can confirm today that we got financing in place for that. So financing places in plan. If we decide that we want to proceed with that, it's something that can be implemented. They looked up to stage 3. We'd like to do it stage 3, but because stage 4 is also only 2 hours, we've checked with our battery supplier, it will be able to recharge quick enough that we can go up to stage 4. But let's say we stay with stage 3 at this stage. They wanted to commission more plants. Currently 15%, 1 in 6 of the houses in Midstream have already got solar on their roofs. We've already put in generators at the retirement village at Ascent, and also it will be supplied to Heights. That means at this stage we're looking at 2,000 out of 6,000 already independent. So we already got 33% off the grid. How can we move the rest? And this is really the plan which we'd like to present today. The ripple relay, I've mentioned that. We've got equipment installed already, operating, and I'll show you just now a curve managing the geysers on an ongoing basis. We've got spare ports on that if we want to extend it to swimming pools and other equipment. Ready in place, ready working, ready to go. Communication, we decided with Midstream Electrical Supplies many years ago to build a virtual private network, a VPN, on top of the fiber optic network of the data service provider, in this stage, Supersonic. So we've got over 1,500 hectares, a fiber optic system in place that's already there and that's operative and has got an uptime of 99% to do these communications. The meters, I read recently that in Cape Town, if you want to have rooftop solar and you want to connect to their system, you have to pay for the bidirectional meters, which means either supply coming inwards or supply going outwards. All the houses in Midstream have already got that installed. So we don't need to go that route. It's already in place, and where we need to supplement all the old meters, that's being paid for by Midstream, or by MES. So there's no cost involved in that, and as I say, it's already in place. And for that reason, we know, and with our excellent communication system, that we can read all the houses exactly on the time when load shedding starts, and you will only pay kilowatt hours consumed during load shedding. And again, for the rooftop guys, if you are pushing back, we will gladly take your electricity, pay you for that, and I'll show you on a slide later on, wheel that back to the other customers in Midstream. We will need to, I've set the communication system, it's in place, and we need to upgrade some of our control gear because this is new for us. If we look at our system, our grid currently, we've got Eskom will always be the primary supply. And I know a lot of people like to bash Eskom. Eskom will remain the primary supplier in this country most probably for a long time. So that they will always be the primary supply. But if they fall out, if they fall away, what's the plan going forward? So the first plan is to install 8 MVA of batteries. That will then become, instead, the primary supply. The plan is, and this is part of the discussion with Eskom, and you'll see just now on the building blocks, we need to meet with Eskom and get their approval because one can't just connect to their grid and be in a position to push back harmonics and all sort of different stuff onto their grid without their approval. So that still needs to take place, subject to the support which we get. So the idea is that we will sync with the grid of Eskom before load shedding starts. It'll be seamless. You won't even know it happened. Once the power falls away from Eskom, the battery supply will take over, and from there onwards, there will be secondary support from either generators or solar farms, or alternatively, the photo cells on top of the houses or other buildings in the estate. We've already got interest from people that would like to develop solar farms in Midstream. Land will be made available to them. They'll be linked up to the grid, and in that way, we will have a full redundancy in place for our supply. And if you add all of that up, you'll get close to 30 MVA. So the question is, what do we need? If you look, this is a typical winter's day, 6th of June last year. You'll see the little spikes on the graph. That's the geyser control coming back. So in that way, we can control the tempo at which the geysers return onto the network. But you can see that we've got about 14. At night time, we've got 6 MVA. So at night time, if there would be load shedding, the batteries will be able to cover the 6. If we need more than that, we will start some of the generators to supplement that. And if it's daytime, obviously the first preference would be to use solar. Sure. Oh, sorry, yeah. So on the left-hand side, the axis is MVA, starting at 0 at the bottom, up to 18 at the top. And at the bottom is time of day from midnight on the left-hand side to midnight on the right-hand side. Yeah, the load profile, what it does, if I can just show you with the cursor, the load would have done this. The load would have gone up to the pink line if the power was not moved to this point. So the power was moved to after peak. And you'll see the same in the evening. So that the spikes you see at that point is the load control of the geysers coming back. And we can control it in different ways, in different sections, in smaller groups or larger groups as we require. Question answered? Thank you. Right, good. Please stop me, because this is really, and this is just to give you a feel as to what's being planned relative to what we need. This is a summer profile, typical summer profile, 23rd of January. We made sure we did not select weekend days because that's totally different. People tend to get up later on a weekend, so the peak is at a different time. Yes, sir.
Sorry, your previous graph, you were explaining it's about 18 MVA, close to 18 MVA. Is that the total midstream
Yes.
demand?
Yes.
So you're looking at approximately 20 MVA is your current load for all the estates in midstream?
Yes, depending on the way we manage the load. We got a connected notified demand of 23 MVA with Eskom at this stage, so it's a lot higher than that. We do see strange peaks after load shedding, depending on the length of load shedding. But this gives you approximately just more than 3 kVA per house, which some people will tell you is ridiculously low for a place like Midstream, but that's the fact. This is an actual reading. And it's because of load control. If we didn't do the load shedding with the geysers, that would have spiked up a lot higher. Yes. This is total, including Mediclinic, everybody. Right, if we look at the summer picture, it's a lot better, a lot more manageable. So we peak here at about 10, and you can see also we peak on the other side approximately at 12. And again, you can see those peaks of the geysers, we can flatten them out more, because other than the ripple control, we can spread them a lot further if we wanted to. But at this stage, we don't need to do that because the inconvenience which we put on the residents is only 2 hours of load control in peak time. And then we switch the geysers on again. Sure. Yes. Exactly. Yes. We can most definitely do that, but that would imply that we will keep the geysers off for longer periods. So if we need to do that, we can do that. And this is exactly the point regarding if we want to go to averting load shedding, that we can add to this through swimming pools and also the other equipment, which we all decided is worthwhile. But you're quite right, we can smooth it out, but there's some inconvenience attached to that. So if we look at, this is a summer graph. Okay. If we look at the summer graph, and interesting, this is the solar of this first same day in January. What's important here to see is on the left-hand side, you will see 1,000 watts per square meter. This is from Weather Underground, so this is not 100% accurate, but this should be a fair indication. And you can see the time of day runs from 6 o'clock in the morning till 6 in the evening. If you look at the winter, you will see that the peak is now at 600 watts per hour, and the time duration is from about 7:30 till 4:30 in the afternoon. So this is the profile of solar winter and summer. But the important thing is to see this. Solar may be green, but it's not fully reliable. And this is the major, major issue. So for this same day, the 6th of January, I took the Weather Underground solar graph and superimposed it. And you can see where it was gradually climbing, obviously overcast, then completely overcast, then sun again, and then again overcast. And in that period, we saw a rise of 5 MVA. So for that reason, we know we got 5 MVA of solar. So we're quite sure that we're at 5 MVA of solar pushing back onto the network. That's not 5 MVA installed. It should be more than that. So we've got to provide for this. So we can't rely fully on solar. And that's an important thing that's part of the proposal. So What's the vision? Reliable, sustainable, cost-effective electricity supply that will avert load shedding 1 to 3 and also 4. And then the future visions would be, can we do more load shedding schedules? Can we do go off grid? But that's not the focus today. The focus today is right at the top. And it's important to know that because I had some comments from some of the members to say, forget it, you'll never get off the grid. That's not the focus. The focus is to say, can we do this with load shedding and learn more and proceed and see where we can go. The building blocks, we'd like to get your input today. If you're against it, please tell me you're against it. It doesn't help we fool one another. If you're for it, but subject to, please tell us what you need to be convinced of, and we will try and do that. And if you just believe it's a good plan, please tell us that. What's important is there must be acceptance that we may need to impose control. We can't avert load shedding in the winter months and just let the demand run away. We've got to control that. And we've got a proposal on how to do that, but the community must accept that. The other one is additional pricing. And I'll come back to the first point there, voluntary or compulsory. We felt from MES it would be wrong to impose this on every existing client, and that it should be voluntary based, and we can discuss just now maybe how we can do that. New clients, we can sign up and make it a terms of condition, but for existing clients, there's got to be buy-in to do this. We need to go to Eskom, submit all our plans, and again, it will be good to have support from the community. We believe we've got a workable plan, but if we've got no support, it's worthless. And then, most importantly, we've already pre-ordered some of the batteries, 16 weeks delivery. So if we push the button and proceed, this can be in place in 4 to 6 months. So it's not tomorrow, unfortunately, but it's not something that will take 2 or 3 years. This is the proposal money-wise, the additional cost over and above what you would normally pay. So we would measure only the kilowatt hours which you consume in that time of load shedding. And then over and above that, you would need to pay R1.50 per kilowatt hour. In that price is provided for purchasing power from solar producers or running the diesel generators. So we've made a calculation, or alternatively loading the batteries from Eskom. So in that, if we got stage 1, and you're a moderate consumption person, so you only would run your TVs and your lights and so forth, you'll pay R2.50 a day on stage 1 and incrementally more as the load shedding period is longer. If you're an average consumer, 2 kilowatt per hour, and I'll go back just now just to the graphs because this is important. If you multiply 2 by 6,000, you'll get to 12 MVA. And you could see that's more or less where the peak was in summer. But in winter, it was about at 3. So if you've got 3 kilowatt hours, you've got all your machines running irrespective of load shedding, and you will be notified of load shedding, even though you won't see the dip in power anymore. So this is one of the proposals. The other proposal is slightly different, to put an incentive for saving electricity or using it sparsely during the load shedding period. And again, this is a consideration. This is to give a feel as to what can be done. Because the idea is that every 7 days, it will be reported to you how many hours of load shedding we had, what was your consumption in kilowatt hours, and what was your average over the 7 days. We're not going to penalize you if you go over for 1 hour. We will do the average over 7 days. What was your average over 7 days, and what was your payment? So every Monday morning, one will be able, it will be a pool, it will be on your profile, on the internet. You will be able to see exactly what your exposure was the previous week. So the concept here is less 20% for those at 1 kilowatt hour per hour average. The middle ones pay the full price, and the people at the top that consume more will pay 20% more tariff. The reasoning behind this also is that the lower group should be served through the solar, if there's sun, obviously. But the solar power will be used to charge the batteries, and which will then be dispensed. At this stage, it's estimated that cost would be in the order of 80 cents per kilowatt hour. Those in the red group will need the generator to run as well, to supplement the solar supply. And this is the reasoning behind that. We also believe that that will also induce, if one pays 800 Rand a month, induce interest to install more controls at the house. So if they would come to MES and ask, please switch off automatically my swimming pool during load shedding, that would be possible to do. So ladies and gentlemen, that's my presentation. I just want to cover one or two points that was raised. One of them was, and I know we've got people here that's not a lot more knowledgeable about this than what I am, but I also know that there are people that's got a specific interest. So one of the questions that was raised was, what about using the Sasol gas line as a generator? At this stage, it's not foreseen that that would be used, but if an outside person would like to propose supplying generators to MES and tender to make electricity available at a certain price, MES will be interested to do that. So the concept would be, in the end, that a wheeling agreement, a power purchase agreement will be closed very similar to what Eskom does. And in a calculator that uses their same criteria. So there's specific items for administration, specific items for loss on the network and all those, and connection fees and so forth. The idea here is that in the end, this is a community project. It'll not be part of MES. Another company will be established called Midstream Energy Generation. With that calculator and that money that's inside there, if you get a credit because we served more from solar than we did from diesel than what the anticipation, you will build up a credit, and that credit will be to your interest. In the end, this project is there to serve the community. Obviously, we've got to pay off a loan, but once we've done that, there will be standard administration fees. It was made known by all the government institutions that there will be a close watch on this regarding profit making in the future, and we will abide by that. The calculator to be used will be in line with the standard Eskom calculator for other wheeling projects, and it will be applied as we proceed. Obviously, if the diesel price goes up, the rate for diesel will go up, but only for the diesel consumed for the project. So that, in short, is my presentation. Can I ask, because I would like to hear from residents, the feeling on this, and I'm not sure which slide I must leave on, maybe this one, because this gives you a feel of the numbers. But I'd like to, I'll take yours first, sir. So I'd like to have a feeling from you for, against, and maybe some, and I'm going to take the whiteboard here and just take 5 questions and then try and group them together and just to give us a bit of speed on that. Right, shoot. Now you're in front.
Just to clarify, I don't actually use any power from MES because my rooftop system and battery capacity is sufficient to fulfill all my needs. Do I take it then that there would be no charges levied on me, or what?
There will be no charge because you'll only be charged for kilowatt hours consumed. So if you would need a top-up, if you sign up, and obviously if you're self-sufficient, then you don't need that. But if you need a top-up and an emergency, you would be able to do that. The gentleman here in front with the white shirt, yes?
Thank you. I wanted to ask, what are the proposed tariffs for those who have already installed solar panels and would like to feed into the grid?
So you're asking what will be paid for the solar, is that correct? Yeah, for people who've already got solar. Yes, at this stage, MES is paying in the order of R1.05. I assume it will come down to about 80 cents. If we look at what the market pays at this stage, it most probably will come down to 80 cents. What one's got to remember is that also the kilowatt hours that you can push back will be limited to 4 kilowatts. So you can't push back, you can't put a generation plant on your rooftop. And the reason for that, let me just explain. The reason for that is that once you become a generator, you impact your neighbor. So MES has got a responsibility to make sure that the network remains stable. For the same reason that Eskom would not allow us to introduce this project without communicating with them and making sure that we don't negatively impact on their grid network. MES has got a responsibility to all the residents. And the moment you start feeding electricity in the reverse end, there are impacts. But if we limit that, and to date it's been limited and measured, then it will not have a negative impact. There was a hand over here. Yes. Sorry, let's take this one and we come back to the front. Sorry. Yes. No, at the back. Sorry, Tweki.
My question is about my question is about the assumed impacts that you referred to. Can you tell us what those impacts are? Because if MES is having trouble getting electricity and every consumer that is willing to set up their solar system, why do you really tell us this story that they can only feed back 4 kilowatt hours or whatever back into the system? That doesn't make sense to me. Because and the second thing that doesn't make sense to me, if you have to purchase power from Eskom, you have to pay a specific wholesale price. So how come that you're not willing to offer the people feeding back into the grid the same price that you're paying Eskom?
So the future of this will be based on a tender. So if I've got a solar farm, if I've got a commercial client willing to put up a 10 MVA solar farm, willing to give it to me at 80 cents per kilowatt hour, that'll be to the benefit of the whole community. And that'll become the governing rate. MES will not determine that. MES will go out to the market. If your price is R1.20 and I can buy it at 80 cents at a solar farm in Midstream, then obviously it'll be to the benefit of the greater community to buy it at 80 cents. So that's, I'm not going to get into all the technical detail. We can deal with that a bit later on if we got time. But any other questions? There was somebody here in front, yes. Over here. Sorry, Tweki. Oh, okay, sorry. Tweki, go.
My question was really, are we going to continue with, I can only feed back so much because I've only used so much, or will I be paid the same rate for whatever I feed back?
You'll be paid the same rate. So we did limit that in the past, saying you've got to be a net consumer. We will change that because what one has also realized about this, and this happened in Germany, where the grid became saturated. And for that reason, we've got to be fair across the board. So if the grid is saturated, we can't buy back more than what we can consume, because that just won't make sense. So one's got to find a balanced, measured approach, and for that reason, we're limiting it. The other thing is also, which is not on the table today, is one of these days we'll have electrical vehicles. And electrical vehicles will typically draw 7.5 kilowatts to charge. Those are the type of things, fortunately with our grid system, which we will be able to switch off during peak times and again allow charging in off-peak times. But these are all kind of things we've got to start planning for going forward. And as I say, our network can handle it. Where did our microphone go? Okay, one in front, and then we'll rush it to the back.
Hi, sorry. As a registered IPP and a power purchase agreement holder in the city of Ekurhuleni, I've got a takeoff from 10 to 262 megawatts. I just feel that we can give MES a solution to the problem for the excess. And that's why I asked you guys, what is your takeoff? 18 megawatts? Is it 20 megawatts? Have you got land? If you have got land, we have the facility of giving you an off-grid solution, okay, for your entire thing. My biggest project is 3.5 gigawatt hours.
Sure.
All right, so I can tell you that we can provide the residents the same respect that you're trying to foreclose to them and provide them. We can give you the same because I've got a license from the city of Ekurhuleni, which is the NER and so forth. So we can provide you a solution out there that gives the comfort to everyone in this audience and the estate. All right. So I've been in touch with Brom for quite some time now. I've given him copies of my power purchase agreement, my documents that have been approved by the state and everything. So it's
Good.
up to you people to...
Thank you. we'll engage. There was somebody right at the back in the center.
Hi, I just have a quick question. Have you guys considered utilizing the methodology of implementing virtual power plants? Because since you have the communications infrastructure, you can directly control every client's inverter. And then a second aspect of that would be, if electrical cars come into play, the technology of vehicle to grid would also positively affect the it will improve the stability of the network if controlled correctly.
Yeah. Okay, so the virtual power station is really demand-side management. That's the ability to manage the demand and lower the demand and spread it over a period. So that is in place. We did look at whether one can do it with inverters and also utilizing the batteries of the individual homeowners. We found that the installations are so diverse and the products do not communicate on the same spread. So if somebody can tell us how we can tap into the batteries of the individual homeowners, there's a huge battery bank out there. But we just found it very difficult. Everybody does not install a Victron and a Freedom One battery. So it's a very diverse market to manage, and for that reason we haven't done that to date. But if somebody's got an idea how to do that, we agree. There's 1,000 houses installed, most probably everyone with at least 2 or 3 kilowatt-hour batteries, maybe more, 5. So we got a huge market to tap. Right, I think there was somebody over here. Yes.
Evening, Jan. I'm one of the installers in the estate, and we've got a client base of about 400 people currently, and we can do exactly that. Going back to your option for the DIY, if we give you an option where our clients can push back 4.6 or 4 kilowatts during load shedding, would you be interested?
Yes, we would be interested, but one must just remember, if they're prepared to provide their battery as well. You know, this is really the crux of the matter. To give the solar of 4 kilowatt does not really solve the problem. We would then still need the primary supply then, and if the primary supply is not a full-scale battery bank, then it has to be the batteries of the individual owners. So that solution works as a primary, only if it's a dedicated. And what I know that most people, when load shedding comes along, they push the reserve of their battery up to the higher point, and then they sit at 80 or 90%. If load shedding is away, then they push it down to 50 or 40% so they can get the benefit of the solar. So that's really the issue. Right, over here and then one at the back.
This is all based on the assumption that the energy available factor is going to recover. What is going to happen if it doesn't recover, and if we live in stage 8 territory in 2 or 3 years from now?
Yes, Bruno, I think the plan here is take the next step, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then start looking further. We think that the batteries will be able to span, especially during daytime with solar. So we'll easily be able to span 4 hours if there's solar. But we don't want to come with the promise today and say we can cover that. Obviously, if there are solutions like this gentleman proposed here in front, if there are other people that can come up with generators, if there's no need for us to generate this and somebody else would put in generators on our behalf, the greater community, and sell back electricity at a cheaper rate than what we can do generators, we want to do that. So we're definitely going to find the most cost-effective solution. But the point is, and Rian, my partner, says, Jan, you haven't got 2 years to analyze. Start doing something. And this is something which we can implement quickly. Right, there was another point over there.
Yeah, evening, Jan. Just a question, please. Coming back to the existing installations of people that have rooftop systems.
Yes.
You said that you're doing away with this staggered approach of remunerating the people. When did that happen? Because we haven't received any communication. That's the first thing. The second one is, I'm very happy to push power back into the grid, which I'm not doing at the moment, mind you. I'm happy to do that, but not if it's going to cost me money to do it. Okay, I've already paid 150 grand. I don't want to pay more money for the privilege of putting power into the system for other people. I think they should then be paying some kind of fee. And then coming back to the issue of right now, I understand that you do have to do a balancing act. So if all the rooftop systems put power into the grid at, let's say, 100 units, and you only consumed 80 units, then obviously you don't want to pay for the other 20 units because...
Exactly.
But, so that is for the moment there. So your model of how you reimburse the people would be very simple with all your technology that you've got. If you simply said, we'll take everything you give us, we'll measure the consumption, and if it's 100 versus 80, you'll be paid 80% of the units that you've put in. Very simplistic, because very soon, when you have your own batteries, then it doesn't become an issue anymore, because then that extra power that's not consumed would go into your batteries.
Yes, except, okay, number one, we haven't changed the rate for the payback yet. It's subject to this, so it hasn't changed, so that's why I haven't received a notification. Secondly, that if energy is generated and we come up with the plan of having the batteries there for load shedding, we must make sure the batteries are charged when load shedding should happen. We can't have the batteries empty and rely on solar that may happen the next day. So the situation, the management situation will change dramatically. But part of this discussion with Eskom would be to say, can we as a group push back electricity onto Eskom's grid? And that will open up a whole complete new array of opportunities. And we will share that with you. So can we as a community sign a power purchase agreement with Eskom? And then you can supply as much as we can manage effectively on the grid. There's a hand there right at the back. There's somebody over there, and then we'll take one over there. I'll come back to you, sir.
Have you looked at the option of going in, become a large power user and signing up for load curtailment as opposed to load shedding? Firstly, it's called upon a lot less often. And the second thing is you don't switch off completely. It's just verifiable load reduction that you have to be able to prove. And I think with solar and allocating the blocks of geysers, you should be able to quite easily reduce load by up to 20%, which corresponds to stage 4 load curtailment, which is the highest that's ever been called to date.
Now, can I ask, I just want to understand your question correctly. Are you asking, have we consulted with Eskom that if we reduce our load, and we can prove that they will not load shed us? Was that the question?
Correct. You effectively become a large power user, which we are, because you have a single point of supply.
Yeah. We did that 5 years ago. We had a written agreement with Eskom. We had a 6-month trial period, which we believe we complied with everything. So they would notify us when load shedding would start, and we would then shed all the geysers, drop our load, and effectively drop the demand on Eskom's side. Unfortunately, that once the trial period ended after 6 months, they were not prepared to extend that. So we did try that before. Once we go back to them with these proposals, we will try that again. That's all on the table in the discussions. Maybe there was a gentleman here in front that's been very patient, and then we'll come back. Sorry, are you getting some assistance on voice control? Okay, we'll take one on the front and then one on the back.
Yeah, I just want to, one guy said, what about if we go to stage 8? Well, I'm Robbie van Heerden. I used to run the power system for South Africa. Sure. And I was the general manager operations until 2015. I introduced load shedding, so I'm the guy that...
Okay. Okay.
So now that I've got everyone's attention...
What's your name again? John Smith.
Taking my life into my own hands. But yeah, there will be, and we'll probably go to stage 8 this year in the winter period, because there's a lot of load we've still got to pick up. A lot of load hasn't come back. What you were talking about just now is with the industrial load, that works a bit differently, because they need to let you know 2 hours before the time. Eskom doesn't always know 2 hours before the time. So they try and limit the large industrial loads to do well for the industries, and they are actually supposed to shed when we are shedding. But those reductions in there are actually industrial loads. And you need, when we used to use them, we used to have to give them 2-hour notice. So you couldn't shut them off immediately. So if you had a problem with the Tuko or Duva or something like that, and you lost a few units, you had to wait 2 hours before you could introduce that. So that isn't a viable proposition in the end of the day. But what I do think in the end of the day is people need to realize that South Africa is in a very bad situation. Load shedding is not going to go away. It's not going to be finished at the end of the year. I spent 3 years now with the minister and trying to get actions and things in place. The power stations are in such a bad condition. It's not the networks, it's the power stations in the end of the day. Maintenance isn't done correctly. Maintenance, there are 101 issues. So from a point of view of what John, what John is saying is we should get ready. Guys, we really should. And maybe all the plans that he's put down that aren't exactly as we should do. We should get the CSR. I also worked with the CSR after I left Eskom in 2015. And to do a specialist, because there's issues about putting inertial generation on and inverters, and do we put in grid forming inverters? Do we do follow inverters as is normally done? What needs to be done and how it needs to be done? I think those are all important things. So I just wanted to say, in the end of the day, load shedding is not going to go away. As much as the President says in December, I do not know how you're going to do it.
Robbie, can I just ask, do you think this is a workable plan?
I do think it's a workable plan, and what we've got to do is we just got to put everything down together and see what we've got, because there are issues in the end of the day. There are issues around stability and transient stability and frequency stability and all those issues. There are grid forming inverters that you can put in now, and grid following inverters is what South Africa's used up till now, but you get an inverter in the end of the day that you can put on your battery system, and you can, in the end of the day, form a grid from it. Before you used to have to wait to get the supply back from the supplier. Eskom is quite happy with grid forming inverters, so there's no issue there. You will have to meet all the grid code things, harmonics, voltage dips, all this sort of stuff. You will have to meet that. I mean, and you will be, when they come, they'll test you and they'll put you forward as viable or not viable. So I think those are things that you'll only do in the end. But I think it is very viable, very viable. And people just need to look and see how they fit in and what they fit in. But from a point of load shedding, guys, we're going to be here for a long time.
Okay, thank you. Let me just let's see, there was a hand over here somewhere. Did that hand disappear? Was the question answered? The gentleman over here, next to you.
Hi, Johan. Jason. In terms of the fee structure that you showed us there, it looks reasonable and fair. However, I live at Ascend, as you know, with my son, so it's just the two of us. And I received an email yesterday stating that I'll be paying an additional 2,700 Rand for electricity. We're currently paying about 5,200 Rand. That puts us at almost 8,000 Rand just for the two of us. Now, in terms of consumption, we definitely don't fall into the higher category from a perspective that it's just the two of us. That's the first thing. So it's 4 showers. We don't cook because I buy ready-cooked meals.
Sure.
Something's wrong. And as much as that looks attractive, and I'd happily pay that, paying 8,000 Rand a month for 2 people is unreasonable. So I don't know what's going on. I don't know where it's going wrong, but it is now costing an insane amount.
Yeah. So what's happened at Ascent and also at Retire is that when we ran into the extended or very high load shedding and this is Retire's sectional title section, when we ran into the load shedding in September last year, and we had these enormous hours of load shedding, a lot of money was spent on diesel, as you can imagine, on those generators. And over the months, we thought that October, that'll be the end of it. Robbie, and we thought in December it'll come to an end, and we realized this is not coming to an end. And for MES to continue to subsidize that diesel on the generators does not make sense. However, if we go over to this, it'll be based on actual consumption. We estimate that the diesel price, which runs at R6.50, if we can put solar in here at 80 cents, you can do the calc yourself. It's 1/8 of the price. So, and if we look here at R1.50, that's with all the financing, whatever in place for the batteries. So we're bringing down the price from 6, 7, 8 rand a kilowatt hour running on diesel. We're bringing down to R1.50. And this is really part of the emphasis and the benefit that will be passed on to those consumers. We will look at ways and means of bridging this 4 months if this is approved. There's another hand there. I would just like to have a feel. I tried to do the whiteboard thing and get a feel as to everybody must say yes or no. Who thinks this is a good plan? Can I just see a raise of hands? Who thinks this should be just left alone and people must be left on their own and to do their own thing? And please don't, we won't be offended. So in general, I must say from our side, we need 50% commitment in some way or form before we will expend 180, 200 million rand. So there will be a circular going out asking people to present it. One of the concepts would be to say, will a street connect? Because then we can put isolators at the mini subs and isolate a street. And if 70% of the street commits, so that in that way we can factor it in and gradually build it up. But we're going to need some commitment for people that's got solar. There's nothing wrong with committing as well, because if you're not consuming, you won't pay. You will pay only on consumption. So if you feel this is a project for the other people, please still show your interest and say, well, guys, go down that route because at least the streetlights will burn. Currently, the streetlights does not burn in those areas. But one of the ideas would be going forward that we would say if there's a 70% commitment from a street, and normally there's 10 to 20 houses on a line, that section will be energized, and we will then switch off the 30% that did not commit. So in that way, at least we can build up the numbers. But anyway, we're going to need some support from the community, because to put 150 million rand, 180 million rand at risk does not make sense. There's a gentleman with a green shirt right at the back. Where's our... My apologies, sorry. Then she's going to run.
Evening. Thanks for the analysis. I think you've answered the one question I was going to ask you. What is the critical mass required from the community to make this viable? And then the next question would have been, is that the total cost, or would you require some funds up front to fund your loan?
We're not going to ask contributions from those committing. So you will only pay per kilowatt hour. So if that was the question, whether there's an upfront cost connection fee, no, there's no connection fee. So it's only payment per kilowatt hour consumed. Right, there, right at the back.
Awesome. Thanks, Jan. I have nothing technical. I actually think this is great. I actually want to say thanks. We all complain as soon as the lights go off. We're all dealing with the same issues, and there's no solutions other than spending a fortune, putting something in place, or what you guys are doing and what you're presenting. In addition to this, the value this will bring to Midstream as well, and I think that's a huge add-on, because as much as Midstream is in demand, being in a state that's not being impacted by load shedding, house prices increase, the demand for Midstream increases. It's one positive spin off the next. So from my perspective, great idea. Thanks very much for the effort.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. We'll put you on the marketing team. There's a hand over here. Okay, one at the back and then one in the middle over here, please.
Sorry, Jan. Taking 200 million at 6,000 households equates to 35,000 rand once-off cost. Are you up for that upfront payment, or are you up for residents to invest in it to save you for paying your interest on your loan?
No, you only pay per kilowatt hour. You only pay per kilowatt hour. We must remember that even these batteries won't last forever. These batteries have got a cycle between 6,000 and 9,000 cycles. If we are at load stage 3, we've got 1,000 cycles a year. So we've got a plan to replace these batteries in 6 or 8 years. So part of this built into the kilowatt hour. So there's no upfront payment. It's only payment per consumption. And if you consume less, you will pay less. So it's as simple as that. Right, sir.
Jan, two questions. Simple one. Will you share this presentation with the community?
Yes.
Fantastic. And just a thought. I know in terms of the Electricity Regulation Act, you know, you need to be fair in terms of your profit as well as to the community, and it must be comparable to other systems. But the question I have is, you know, if you guys say, well, you guys making a 10% profit on this investment or whatever, I think you will also, you know, it will allay some fears from the Midstream community, you know, that this is some other scheme or whatever. I'm usually in favor of this. I think this is a fantastic initiative, but it's just a thought in terms of the buy-in from the community.
Okay, the point is that MES is a reseller. So MES cannot determine its own tariffs. So MES has to do it subject to approval through Eskom and Eskom's directive. So a calculator will be built similar to the other wheeling calculators. That will be presented to Eskom, and based on their directives, we will take it forward. So your protection would be that Eskom has to make sure it complies with the Electricity Supply Act. So, and that's all subject to our discussions with them. So the protection will lie there. MES is not allowed to determine its own fees and tariffs. It has to comply with the Supply Act, which determines that it has to supply at the rates of Eskom. Right, the gent here in front and over here, there's a few hands over here. Oh yeah, sorry.
Hello, Jan.
Yes.
It has happened a few times that there's load shedding due and suddenly it don't go off. And other times power must come on and then we get a tweet half an hour later, Eskom's guy is sleeping somewhere and we don't know when he's going to come. How will I as a house owner know that load shedding has officially started and load shedding has ended?
We will
the rates will
we will
change.
introduce a mode of communication. So maybe just on your first point, we got 3 transformers at the Eskom yard. We've got a 10 MVA, 10 MVA and a 20 MVA. What happens is sometimes they're very good at switching off, but sometimes switching on again, they only switch on 1 or 2 of the transformers. If we can balance the load within the estate with those 2, then we proceed. We got 5 people on duty every time there's load shedding, whether it's 2 o'clock in the morning or in the afternoon, whether it's a Sunday or Saturday. So we make sure from that point of view. The benefit of this would be that we will be self-sustaining. But obviously, if Eskom, the guy died on his way to us, you know, if that extends to 5 and 6 hours, we may run out. But we will make plans, and depending on solar. Right, yes, sir.
Thanks, Jan. I got a colleague there, Robbie. I've known him from Woodbank days when he was still working in Woodbank. He went to the control center, and one of the things that I have learned, I'm not only a PRN, but I'm also a loss adjuster. So I've been doing a lot of forensic audits, like Tutuka Power Station and many other power stations in South Africa. One of the biggest things that people don't understand about renewables, I sit on the National Work Group Committee. I've contributed 65% of the current document, and there's a lot of flaws which have not been resolved yet, which we're hoping to have it resolved very soon, which Bram is familiar. One of the things that I have concerns with is we're all talking about rooftops and all that stuff, and trying to evacuate back into the grid. What they don't understand, in order to successfully evacuate energy that's going to be payable and usable, you must have a good insulation network. And one of the reports I delivered to Eskom in 2014 was depicting this decay. There's been no maintenance. I think Robbie will support me on that. This is why everything is collapsing. I can guarantee you this is going to hang around for 18 years, gents. This is a fact. This is reality. Robbie will even nod if he's the person I know he is. He will tell you the truth now. For 18 years, you're going to be encompassed with this minimum, and that's if you have a commitment from state governance to control and regulate the current infrastructures that they currently enjoy. So for me, as a citizen of this republic, as an honorable professional, okay, I should tell you the truths, okay, and the truths are dismal. These people are trying to come with some sort of solution and plan, all right, which is honorable. There are solutions that can assist everyone. Again, we need the community. In order for a person like myself to give you guys a 10 or 20 megawatt, a 10 megawatt off-grid solution, 24/7 with 20 years or 25-year warranty from Lloyd's of London is 445 million rand investment. Battery storage, everything with the state-of-the-art sort of commitment. But we need to know that we can repay that debt to the investors. So those are the basic commitments that you guys need to understand about renewables. There's so many things, there's so many people out there. I've done forensic audits now in Centurion this past month. 2 houses burnt down. People put in solutions and the things collapsed. All right? So I'm being honest with you guys. Jan is trying to do something good for the community. We need to approach it from a very, and we have to have everyone's input in this because we're all part of it. And I think there are solutions out there that is affordable. Like he says, 80 cents per kilowatt hour. This is what you'll be able to enjoy because that's what a renewable power plant will be able to deliver. And after the payback period, you could be even enjoying something up to 40 to 30 cents per kilowatt hour. So those are the solutions that are available in the financial models that I've done myself.
Thanks. Right, let's proceed. Maybe just a point of interest, just to touch. No, that's fine. Thanks. I just want to mention the idea is not for MES to do the solar farm, to do all the generators, to do the whole toot. If there are people out there that's able to provide at a cost-effective basis, we know at what cost MES can produce those. Please come forth. Give us your information. We've got a number of people from Midstream Electrical Supplies around. Karel van Rensburg is here from Midstream Electrical Supplies. Please come and give your information. The concept is not here that MES will build everything. The concept is that MES will tie it in and wheel it back to our consumers. And the more sustainable, the more off-grid we can go, the better. But I don't want to start there. I want to baby steps and get there. There was a gentleman over here. Just give it to Robbie quickly because he's got a sense to say something about load shedding.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to answer the guy's question over there about sometimes you don't load shed and other times you do. You must remember that in this period where we are actually load shedding, we are curtailing wind in the evenings. It's around managing frequency and how you can manage frequency. So if you're sitting at National and you see the frequency starts climbing, now it's going above 50. You can only go to about 52 hertz, and then you start tripping the turbines, and you trip all the machines. So you cannot afford for the frequency to go up as much as you can't afford for it to go down, which it will also trip at 47.6 hertz. You're going to lose your turbines. So they will sit there and they'll see it's climbing to 50. So either they can phone and get the wind farms to curtail, or they can increase load, which will bring the frequency down. So rather than actually curtail the wind in the end of the day, they bring back load. So one night you'll be sitting there all of a sudden and you won't be switched off. It's no train smash. It's actually good for you at that stage in the end of the day. And it may happen in the end of the day that we have a bust up on the system. Not we. I don't work there anymore, but I still work with them. In the end of the day, that you lose a few machines, and we do need to do load shedding, and it might quickly jump from stage 3 to stage 4 to stage 5. As you were saying, in the end of the day, the maintenance out there is pathetic. There's maintenance agreements that haven't been done for 2 years, that they haven't even, I don't even want to talk about it.
Right, thanks. Thanks, Robbie. I think the important thing is what Robbie has mentioned, and this is the responsibility MES has got. Just as much as Eskom has to protect their network and have a proper control center, the same thing applies for MES. And this is really why we rather want to dampen down the supply. bring it to a manageable level, and know that we can feed it back into the network. We're not trying to harm anybody or cut anybody down. As far as the costs are concerned, we know it's prohibitive at this stage. We will look at measures going forward to make it more attractive. And we've got various ideas on that. At this stage, we're very strict with people pushing back that electrical engineer certifies every year it's still safe. We've seen houses burn down, it was mentioned just now. We've seen installations which is not up to scratch. So we understand the emphasis to push back, but we've got to do it in a responsible way. And that's really what we're trying to do. Yes, sir.
Thanks to Audrey, you've done about 5 kilometers today so far. Those of us with rooftop solutions, will our batteries then become redundant? Won't we need them?
The information we've got is that those batteries have got 4,000 cycle life. So most probably with this, you've got a choice. You can either through load shedding use your own battery, and then in other times use more of the power from the system. So if you would use your battery during that time and only draw it down 30%, it'll last longer. So it really is going to go about your consultant assisting you to manage your battery the best. And then your battery will last a lot longer. So there's ways and means going forward, and this gives you an option of an alternative supply. There's a lady right at the back. I think we almost, I'm happy to handle questions, and if you've had enough information, you're welcome to leave. We won't take any offense. I'm not an actor or a singer. So if you would like to go home, otherwise we're going to stay on until the last question has been answered. And thanks for participating. I think this brings it to the fore. It's important that you understand what we're trying to do and all the bells and whistles. We're going to take the lady over there, and then we'll come back on this side.
Thank you. I just want to find out the prices proposed. Is that at all dependent on Eskom price hikes or anything, or is this totally independent from Eskom prices? And my second question, would we plan at all in future to use less of Eskom power and maybe more of our own power, which might be cheaper, hopefully? Thanks.
Right, let me go back to this model, which shows Eskom is not there. We've got a primary supply, the battery's been charged. We've got a diesel on backup. If the load's above 8 MVA, those diesel generators will run and produce diesel, except if we've got enough solar. This is the concept. So the price was based on the following. We said we're going to use 40% of the power input from diesel at R6.50 a kilowatt hour, at 25 Rand per litre. If that price escalates, then obviously that price will escalate and it will have an impact. And you will get that calculated rate as we go along. We then said 20% only from solar. We hope it'll be more because solar we worked in at 80 cents a kilowatt hour. And then we said some power off grid, off peak, and then some power at standard rates. So that's the way we came to an estimate as what we think is feasible. So, but obviously if the prices are lower, then, so to answer your question, is this subject to escalations of Eskom? Yes, it's subject to escalation of Eskom, subject to escalation of diesel. So those will all be factored in. We'll have a calculator that will determine that, and you'll get the numbers, and you will know exactly what the rate is. The idea has been, I see you, Audrey. The idea has been that we would like to have a commitment of a 12-month connection, and thereafter 1 month notice. So if you would like to try it out, 12 months, that'll give us some leeway to start up the project. But if you would then like to believe it's not in your interest, we believe it'll be by far in your interest. So we were quite confident. Right, there was a question on that side.
Jan, jy het gemeld dat julle 80 cent per kilowattuur gaan betaal vir mense wat krag terugplaas op die grid. Ek was gister meegedeel deur 'n amptenaar in mense kantoor dat julle huidiglik 40 cent betaal. Ek verstaan nie.
Okay, right. The question is, we're currently paying 40 cents. How can we pay 80 cents? Currently, the price MES pays back is based on what Cape Town has advertised. Cape Town said 78 cents per kilowatt hour, plus a temporary subsidy of 25 cents. That's what Cape Town is currently prepared to pay. On the assumption that you're a net consumer, That means that if you push back 500 units, you would also consume 500 units or more from them. That was introduced, I think, middle of last year, also at Midstream. So we said, let's use the rate Cape Town has got. The reason why we're using that, Eskom hasn't got a rate. Eskom hasn't got a buyback rate. So what we then said, there was some opposition from some of the members that said, guys, you're now cutting off our legs. How can you pay me nothing? And then we said, we will pay you up to the point where you're a net consumer. So let's say you push back 1,000 units and you only consume 500. We will pay you 500 units at the R1.05 and the other 500 units at 40 cents. Why 40 cents? 40 cents is what is the payback on a solar plant. So you'll get your payback on the solar plant. So it's a combined rate. Going forward, we think we will simplify it. Only one rate. We will look at the guys from the solar farm. If they want 80 cents a kilowatt hour, which is a good rate, you can ask this gentleman. If anybody can get 80 cents on a kilowatt hour from a solar farm, they will take it. It's a good payback. And that's what we think, of one price. But that's going forward once this project is approved. Right, so one at the back and then one over here. Right.
Jan, you got about 200 yeses tonight. What's the plan in terms of selling it to the bigger community? Because you probably have to get the buy-in before you can start.
The plan is to do a write-up of this evening, and by Thursday send out a circular to everybody in their estate and ask them just give an indication, yes, I would like to connect, or no, I'm not interested to connect. And please talk to your friends that got rooftops. Please say, yes, I would like to connect, because the impact on you is so little. But at least if you connect, you can push back during load shedding. If you're not connected, you can't push back during load shedding. Right, Henri?
Hi, two questions, Jan. First, I see that you've considered various sources of input. Is there any reason why you didn't consider wind turbines?
Yeah, if anybody's got a proposal on wind turbines, we were advised that we're not in the right area for proper wind production. Yeah.
There's lots of wind at the back there.
Okay, right. Robbie says here, number one, you've got to go 150 meters above ground level.
Okay.
Yeah. 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 And the other problem is the only wind we've got here is from Erwat.
Right, other question I have is related to, this is a 4 to 6 month startup, as I've understood.
Say again, I couldn't get that.
I've heard this is like a 4 to 6 month startup if you buy the batteries now.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a way that we can currently look at reducing the stage of load shedding in some of the estates? In other words, the proposal which you currently already do is you take all the power from the people that can feed back with rooftop installations and relay that to a specific estate. Like, for example, today it's Midfield's turn. They can get all the rooftop power and they don't have any load shedding. Next day it's Midlands and they don't get any load shedding. Is there any way that can be done, or don't you have the infrastructure to accommodate that?
It's not feasible, because they spread, firstly, they spread all over the place. Secondly, if this pattern happens, where you find that the sun falls away or there's overcast or a thunderstorm comes through, you need a primary supply. You need a new Eskom. And the only way you can do that, I think Karel calls it a grid maker. You need a grid maker. And the only solid way you can do that is either through generators or through a battery bank. Right, over there. We'll come back to you, sir.
Firstly, thanks. This seems to be very well thought through. A couple of questions. Who do we speak to if we have specific technology that we can propose and say this is a good technology?
You can speak to Audrey or Annalisa in front after the meeting.
All right, and then what are the chances of us as residents investing in the scheme? So instead of you going to a finance company, part of that financing comes from the residents, or do you then have to be a financial entity? Is that the problem with that?
We will look at those options and also speak to the people that want to do the solar farms. If I was in your shoes, I'd much rather invest in a solar farm and take out an interest in a solar farm than to get into the intricacies of all this. But anyway, those options will be discussed going forward. Yes, and over here.
Sorry, Jan, we've got a community here that's very creative. Any chances of going to a residential time of use and getting the people to use less power during the peak times?
Yeah, there are problems with that. And the biggest problem is currently the tariff structure of Eskom. You know, that they haven't, we're not allowed to do our own tariff structures. Our meters can do that, but we're not allowed at this stage to do our own tariff structures of time of use. We would like to do that because currently in peak time in winter, Mess pays R5.50 a kilowatt hour. Yet it then sells electricity at R2.11 and R3.19 per kilowatt hour. So there's a huge loss. If that could have matched better, then obviously one could have made the dips lower. But that's not an option right now. We've got to do it the way the tariff structure is put together. Over here? Yeah. Yeah, and then in front, just in front. Yeah, sorry. Yes, sir.
Jan, as you know, I own the largest manufacturing of surge protection and load shedding protection and so on in this country. And I'd like to be able to assist you where possible in terms of putting this forward, because there are consequential damages that happen with load shedding and with these sort of implementations. So please, by all means, make contact.
Sure. Thank you. Right, just in front.
Jan, what does this mean for retire at midstream? What is the implications?
You're talking about sectional title? Yes. All right. Okay, sectional title, I would guess, would be in the green band on that. And we think if that would happen, so at that consumption level, we think that the cost of diesel will come down by either down to 20% of the current cost of diesel or even less, and then obviously without any noise. So a dual benefit. Old Audrey has done her 10,000 steps today.
Thanks. Yeah, just two quick things. Obviously, also in favour. One, if it can just be transparent and open and very well informed, because it can be misunderstood and everyone has opinions and everyone, open tenders, just make it clean and keep us informed every step of the way of exactly what's happening. Because everything I heard you today, I never knew. And now I'm going to have to go repeat it to all the neighbours who didn't attend, because everyone's got an opinion. And so the more transparent, the more communication regarding the financing, especially regarding the, what management fees later and stuff like that. I mean, there's some creative ideas. And then secondly, just geysers are obviously a problem. And you guys, obviously, I think collectively we can have good bargaining power and everyone's investing themselves now. And you may be unhappy with some installations. I mean, if you come up with a solution and say we can get solar geysers for $6,000 each as opposed to $10,000, whatever they're on the market, maybe there's opportunity there to, collectively we all bring down our power as well as generating our own. Just food for thought, we'd be up for it.
Okay. Right. I think we're almost at the end. There's a gent over there with the check shirt.
Good evening. Just a quick question on this. You're catering for up to stage 4.
Yes.
Have you guys considered load limiting instead of load shedding during these load shedding times? Should we go to stage 6, allowing maybe only 20 amps to the residents at the time of load shedding for longer periods, because your backup will then survive those stages? Second question I have is the system for those that doesn't opt in with rooftop solar already. How are you going to switch them out if you're going to keep the power on? Do you have control at meter level or do you have control above? Because somehow the meter that's installed will not know where the source of energy is from. You need to tell it if you're going to ride through load shedding to this stage.
Right, so the idea would be that in the mini-sub, those big green boxes, we will put in smart breakers and disconnect streets. So that whole street will be dead. And once it's reached 70% applications, then we will only switch off the 30% that did not opt in. So that's the way it'll work. So once there's load shedding, the streets that opted in will be switched on or left on. The others will be switched off. And then within that street, those that decided. So we will manage the minority and not the majority. Right, where are we? All right, there's a...
Yes, I support the notion of transparency. And I would like to know if you can make available the commercial calculations behind this model.
Yes.
And why I think MES's risk is in somewhat our risk as well.
Yeah, there are built calculators of Eskom on the purchase power agreements, and we will use a similar calculator and make it available. And that will be adjusted monthly, because if the diesel price rises, the price will change. But it'll be made available, and it will be done through a totally separate company. MES will actually buy electricity from this company, and that will be all displayed. And there are established calculators. The gent here in front can tell you. There are established calculators, so that's exact same basis will be used. And again, subject to approval by Eskom. You know, Eskom has to approve. Where are we, Audrey? Right, and then the gent here right in front, please.
Thank you. Have you got an email address? There's going to be 1 million questions after this. Have you got an email address that we can send questions through to? That's number one.
Energy@midstream.co.za.
That's number one. Number two, you're talking about ripple relays and geysers. What about ripple relays and heat pumps? I never use my geyser. It's permanently off.
Yes, we can do that. We will, once we do this, we will look at those that consume the highest kilowatt hours in peak time, in these times of load shedding, and then approach them and say, guys, we've got to start managing the load at your house. We're not going to manage everybody. If people are able to keep it low, and we hope that the pricing structure will be an incentive to rather be on the bottom end of the scale and pay less than be on the top end of the scale and pay more. But we can extend it. We can extend it to swimming pools, we can extend it to air cons, and so forth. So if those people in the red box comes to us and say, please do it automatically on our behalf, we're quite happy to abide and then install the equipment. Yes, sir.
Jan, you mentioned earlier on there will be a cap on how much a producer will be able to put back into the system. I think you mentioned
4 kilowatt.
4 kilowatt. Is there a reason why, if I produce more, that you won't take it?
What happened is with the bigger units that were installed, we saw that the kiosks got more electricity feeding back into it than what it normally would have produced the other way, which means the cables are coming under stress. And these gents will be able to tell you the harmonics and all the other things that happens. I'm not that technical. I'm a civil engineer that's involved in this business. But there are reasons why it's got to be done in a measured way. If in time it's proven that it can be raised slightly, we will raise it slightly. But we've got to manage the load that comes onto the system. We can't just have an open-ended system. And again, we've got to go and measure the harmonics. We've got to go and measure everything that comes back, as Eskom is going to measure us. And hopefully, if we can, as a group, have enough electricity to push back to Eskom, we can comply with them and sell back to Eskom, to the benefit of everybody. But for the moment, it's a measured approach. Right, one over there, and Robbie, will come back to you.
Hello, I'm Robert Rode. I'm not an electrical guy at all. But you've covered about 15% already by current guys that installed their solar stuff. Now, if you can increase that to 50%, would that help? And then you can maybe develop a package deal for the rest of Midstream, where they can buy in solar power and install it on their homes. Then you create a solar farm on the rooftops of all the homes in Midstream. And you can then regulate who they buy from, and you can let them buy systems that are already compatible with your system. And then they could possibly buy it at a lower cost, because you get a bulk deal. So I don't know whether you're investigating that at all. So to get, say, 50% of the homes powered up, and then you virtually have solved your problem.
Yeah. Firstly, we'd like to give the benefit to the early adopters and not the late adopters. And secondly, we'd like free business to manage themselves. So I think there's a number of solar installers here today. So we would not like from MESA's side to try and get involved in installing solar. I don't think it's our business plan, and I don't think it's something we're going to do. Yes, sir.
Sorry, I just want to understand, on average I generate, or I send back to the grid 20 kVA per day, on average. Summertime. Wintertime, 15. That's the excess capacity that I have in the system. So what happens to that power when it goes back into your grid?
Currently.
Yes, currently.
Currently, it just flows back in the grid, and it gets sold on to the consumers. But it's so little compared to the bigger scheme of things. But, well, we got approximately 1,000 houses connected. We estimated about 500 or 600, so about 10% pushes back. But it becomes part of the grid. But the question that Jens asked here in front, can we in some way get it to everybody else? And it's not feasible at this stage. We need to take it to a bank and then spread it from the bank. Right, where are we, Audrey?
That's okay, I'll talk.
Okay, Audrey answered that. Audrey answered that question. Can we adjourn? I think we've answered all the questions. Thanks very much to everybody that's been here. If you want to see somebody or speak to somebody, Carl is here, Annelies is here in front, and also Audrey, if you can catch her with the microphone. Thanks so much for being here. Thank you. Bye-bye.